I'm Billy S. Today, we're ranking the tracks of Mario Kart World. I didn't think I'd be as into this game as I actually am, but the various new techs you can perform with the rail and charge jump systems has made a lot of these tracks really exciting to perfect. There are some crazy shortcuts in this game if you're willing to put the time in to learn them, and I'm still trying to get down the basics. So my criteria here is pretty simple. I'm ranking all the regular 3-lap tracks you can get in versus mode, as those are primarily what I play online. Either I play in the Mario Kart World Discord, popularized through Shortcats videos, or I play in 12-player competitive. I've had a lot of time to get to know all these tracks, so my ranking is based purely on which ones I find the most fun to race on. Nothing more, nothing less. And I won't be considering previous iterations for retro courses, as I just don't have enough experience with the series as a whole to form that type of opinion. So, let's jump right in. All 30 Mario Kart World tracks ranked. Let me know your favorites down below. I would be remiss if I didn't give an honourable mention to the worst track in the game, the intermission course of Crown City to Peach Stadium. This is the infamous Peach Loop, which dares to call itself a course, to the point where it's featured in the Grand Prix mode's Shell Cup. In any other circumstance, I wouldn't focus on an intermission like this, but when the course is specifically shown off in the main mode people pick up to try the tracks for the first time, it leaves a really bad impression. It's like Baby Park, except it's a tad longer and far less interesting due to the single lap format. If they made you do multiple loops, at least you could argue that the chaos of trying to stay in front for longer would enhance the experience, but no, you do one loop, finish the track, and never play it again. All this because they needed regular Peach Stadium in the Special Cup to connect to Rainbow Road. The intermissions really messed with the Grand Prix system. What do you mean Moo Moo Meadows and Bowser's Castle are in the same cup? At number 30, we have Desert Hills. This is one of the shorter tracks on the roster, often over rather quickly due to the rapid loop you take around the course. You've got a few wide turns at the start, which you can boost over with a mushroom, before you emerge into a vast field of sand dunes. It's the best part of the course, finding different moments to trick on the crests while avoiding the Batodons floating throughout. Then you go down a winding path that leads back to the start with multiple different routes to take. Glider ramps, cutting across the sand, or even doing a large boost around the right side of the finish line to reach a stone ramp leading into the next lap. And as you progress, Tokotokos from Super Mario Land will race down the course to try and run you over, giving a little bit of an obstacle to avoid. Why Desert Hills lands at the bottom is because it is a pure bagging track. Whoever gets the shock item or manages a shock dodge at the optimal moment will almost always win the race here, or at least place in the top third of the leaderboard. And you'll always get shocked going into either the second or third item set on lap 3, because if you don't have any mushrooms, you can't do any of the fast cuts to reach the finish line. It effectively ends your race there and then. Beyond that, for being the game's signature desert course, it's incredibly boring. I thought with Mario Kart World's focus on grind rails, wall riding, and larger courses overall, that we get a brand new desert course that takes all those aspects and give us something expansive. Imagine driving up the pyramid from Mario 64's shifting sandland. That would have been extremely cool. Instead, we end up with a track that literally nobody is happy to see picked unless you're purposefully bagging every race. At number 29, we have Choco Mountain. There's nothing inherently wrong with this course. I actually really love the redesign here that takes creative liberties with the original and revamps it as this monster truck-shaped hideout for the Chargin' Chucks. I'm one of the few people who found the original track to be rather bland, and I always groaned when it got picked in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but here I think they reimagined it as best they could. The layout and the falling rocks are truly the only part of this that feel like the original Choco Mountain course. My problem is that I just don't find this course particularly fun to run. I'm not a fan of the chocolate, as it just looks like disgusting mud, and if that's the point, then it just doesn't hit aesthetically for me. The track itself has some good shortcuts and a really nice long cut towards the end if you've got the mushrooms for it, and I like the double item boxes being out of the way in comparison to other courses, as it forces you to take a time loss if you want more item security. But I just find driving here to be very sluggish and unappealing, and it's purely not my vibe aesthetically. The large drops at the end of the course especially are a little annoying, as airtime in this game really slows you down, and it makes getting a final comeback at the end of the course pretty rough. At number 28, we have Mario Circuit, another bagging track based on the first 3 iterations of the original Mario Circuit from the SNES. The idea of combining them all together is genius, as it allows for a longer race, and you can split each lap based on which of the 3 tracks you're on. In practice though, it's often over as soon as it begins, with the track lasting roughly a minute, and has a heavy focus on bagging till the last 2 item sets to get great boost items to overtake everyone on the final stretch. Putting so many shortcuts in a course like this was always going to incite the baggers, and if you're the one holding the shock, you may as well just congratulate yourself there and then. I'm obviously not the biggest fan of bagging tracks in this game, and then imagine this go-kart course with 24 players at a time trying to one-up each other. It's too much chaos for me. It rewards great item management, but doesn't give a lot of skill expression outside of a few cool charge jump shortcuts you can pull off at various points along the outer walls. Still, aesthetically, I love that we have a normal go-kart course that feels realistic now. I always hated how big the walls were in previous games when they remade these SNES courses. At number 27, we have Koopa Troopa Beach, which is effectively this game's baby park. You do 5 laps around a small island, where the shortcut potential is minimal and the name of the game again is bagging. What I like about Koopa Troopa Beach though, is that bagging doesn't inherently give you the win, especially on races where all of your opponents also try to bag. Sometimes you end up bagging so much that a large group of you end up too far back to get any meaningful placements. Sometimes you want the thrill of front-running Koopa Troopa Beach so you can feel something in your life. Or maybe you just want to hear that absolutely fantastic Koopa rave music that plays in the background here. Okay, I may have ranked this course above the others purely for the music alone, but sue me, it gets my blood pumping. I'd still rather play a majority of the rest of the track roster though, and Koopa Troopa Beach in competitive is fucking miserable. But in regular rooms, it's one of the few courses that truly revels in the 24-player chaos. At number 26, we have Starview Peak, which is the last of the disappointing courses for me. I don't hate this place, but I really think for Super Mario Galaxy, there are just so many better course ideas floating in the ether, and this wasn't really what we wanted. I was hyped because racing through the Comet Observatory is something I have desired in Mario Kart for years, but you're only in the observatory for a short while, and if you're playing the 3-lap variant, you don't even get to enjoy the downstairs library. I'd have personally scrapped the final glider segment and have the track extend slightly, so the final portion goes into the spiral turns you use in the Grand Prix mode. My main issue with Starview Peak though is that there are practically no shortcuts here. You get 1 mushroom boost before the water section, and 1 mushroom boost during the water section. That's it. The rest of the course is all just about being ahead and not getting shocked. And with Mario Kart being so brutal about falling from the track, meaning losing your items, and with how aggressive people can be at the ramps, and especially the glider section at the end, it's so easy to go multiple laps on Starview without any items. And you just get knocked down and down and down and down. It's so hard to make a comeback here. And no amount of fantastically gorgeous music or jaw-droppingly beautiful visuals can save the fact that I feel my life draining away every time I run this course, because I know I'm about to have some of the most painful Mario Kart moments happen to me in the next 3 minutes. At number 25, we have Dandelion Depths, which I am heartbroken to put down this low, but I just don't find this course that compelling. The Steam Gardens aesthetics and the beautiful subterranean lake should be right up my alley, but my problem comes from how the course itself just doesn't really have any meaningful obstacles or shortcuts that excite me. You get 2 mushroom shortcuts near the item boxes before the cave, and you have the final shortcut around the last turn where people almost always shock you. It can be very frustrating being in a front-running position, only to lose because 3 people on the boost ramps behind you had mushrooms on lap 3. And the water section only amounts to a bit of tricking where you're actively trying to avoid staying on the water. You get 1 split path before the cave, which isn't that exciting, but I understand it's to break up the pack when you're in a 24-player room, and the main early hidden path along this wall is actually slower than going down the first large spiral normally. So why have this alternate upper path if nobody is ever going to use it? It just sucks that for a course with such a fun aesthetic and featuring Parabitty buddies, it just doesn't have a lot going for it in terms of keeping me engaged. I actually prefer Dandelion Depths in the Knockout Tour mode, as you still get some of the tough turns to deal with in both the Ice and Moon rallies, and it's often used as an elimination point to increase the tension. At number 24, we have Mario Bros. Circuit, the starting course of the game, and one of the most well-made starting courses in the series. I really like the Radiator Springs aesthetic. It's so different to the usual starting circuits which often go for that Mario World 1 energy. The first lap isn't anything crazy, though. You can grind on these rails for extra coins, you have the signature elevated turn that wraps you back around down a hill to the finish line, and you have the shortcut at the end where you glide to this platform and then down to the finish. Or you can do some fun grind tech to chain yourself into a hidden shortcut at the start of lap 2, though you do need a mushroom to do this. On the glider, land on this rail, then trick into the pit lane rail to the left of the starting line, and from there boost into these boxes to get a quicker first turn. This is a well-known bit of tech, and because of that it's actually quite risky, as you're liable to get bumped off by other players doing the same thing. But if you have a banana or a green shell, you can trap the rail by dropping the banana on top of it or firing the green shell backwards, which is deliciously devilish, Seymour. And while bagging is somewhat rewarded on Mario Bros. Circuit, I think it's a course where your main challenge is just dodging the incoming shock. 9 times out of 10, people will either shock into the item set before the signature turn, or the final item set on the course on either laps 2 or 3. If you predict the shock and you have a shock dodge item at the ready, this course is yours for the taking. Still not my favorite to race on because I find it rather basic compared to later entries with more fun tech, but a solid choice overall. At number 23, we have Wario Shipyard, which I'm actually surprised to see land this low on the list. But if I'm being completely honest with myself, I find the moment-to-moment gameplay of this track to be quite painful. That isn't to say it's bad. If I have a good run on this course, I can have a fun time. But the main complaint also happens to be this course's main feature. It's a water track. I never played Mario Kart 7, but seeing how Wario Shipyard was based around the underwater mechanics of that game, it feels like an odd choice to remake here, especially when driving on water in Mario Kart World can feel so uncomfortable for the player. Turning is brutal, with you needing to forego drifting a lot of the time to take the tightest lines. Tricking off of the waves is difficult, as you can't always tell when something is trickable or not, but the nail in the coffin for Wario Shipyard is that the best parts of this course are when you're not touching the water. That U-turn into the final item boxes, the straightaway at the end of the course where you can trick off these masts to avoid the water, and the final turn to the finish line, they're great. And people are discovering more ways to play the floor is lava here, as you can charge jump into the first ramp, trick off of this tree, and completely skip a third of the track's water route. When what makes Wario Shipyard fun in this game is the concept of avoiding its main gimmick, the water, I think that's a track that completely fails at what it sets out to be, and that's why I'm ranking it low on this list. I also may just hate this tunnel turn with a burning passion, and I can never figure out the best line for it. At number 22, we have Boo Cinema, a track that is highly regarded for its theming, but which ends up having an overly basic layout that doesn't lead to a memorable race experience. It's a giant figure 8 with half of the track taking place within a floating movie reel. And this is so cool. Leaping into the cinema scene and racing across the reels of Princess Peach, it's amazing. But there's just not enough here in terms of gameplay to keep my interest. The most dynamic aspect of the track are these turns, where sometimes the reel will move with you and sometimes will move against you, alternating between laps. So you have to remember which drifts to take sharply to benefit from this change, and which to take a tad wider so you don't accidentally get slowed down. I like the lead up to the movie screen, grinding down the aisle before the ramp, and I like the initial glide out of the screen back to the real world. But with the track being so tight and condensed, it's almost impossible to hold a commanding lead on skill alone, especially in a 24-player race where it feels like you're in danger no matter what. This was a track I was insanely excited for when I first booted up Mario Kart World, but now I barely pick it when I see it online. Had they added more twists and turns, or somehow had alternate paths in the movie sequence, I think this would have been a much better track and would have cracked my top 20. It's kinda crazy because if we're doing a tier list though, this is actually a B tier track for me. Mario Kart World is honestly that goated when it comes to its track selection. At number 21, we have Peach Beach, a remake of the GameCube original, where laps 2 and 3 are now their own entirely new sections. And this change is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing, because had we done 3 laps of regular Peach Beach, I don't think it would have worked for Mario Kart World, as it barely leans into any of the game's new features. And lap 2 is a fantastic addition, having you drift up winding roads through Peach's resort, before taking either the upper path along the rooftops, or a lower path along the market streets, doing a sharp U-turn to reach the start of lap 3. But Peach Beach is also a curse because lap 3 ends up being an extremely long glider section without much to do that needed some boost rings really badly, and then we're just on the water for the rest of the track with no obstacles aside from 1 or 2 shy guys on jet skis that are woefully simple to avoid. If you're in first place, you're likely fine unless you get shocked after the last item set, in which case, prepare to be passed by fucking everyone the moment you touch dry land. Lap 3 absolutely kills this track's momentum in a way that has me hesitant to pick it now, especially when lap 2, the part I was praising, ultimately only has one way to go if you want to actually be efficient. You have to take this shortcut on the lower road, cutting off a major turn and putting you ahead of the competition by seconds. If you're not taking this cut, you're throwing the race away. It is that good of a time save. But it has the Yoshi's Valley effect from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where once everyone knew the rope bridge was the fastest route in that track, it's all anyone ever took, taking away the joy of that course. Because this is the fastest shortcut on Peach Beach by a mile, people have way less incentive to take the upper rooftop path, and that's enough for me to keep Peach Beach out of my top 20. At number 20, we have Moo Moo Meadows, one of my favourite tracks from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, did we need Moo Moo Meadows back again? No, but it's here, and I still absolutely love it. It's a simple circular track that has you driving through a meadow filled with cows, then back through a track filled with Monty Moles, while drifting around satisfying turns and enjoying the bop of a music theme. What I love about this rendition of Moo Moo Meadows is how we have multiple new shortcuts to pull off. You can do the classic blast through the off-road with a golden shroom, and the ending has a nice cut you can pull off to make up some time, but now we have an extra mushroom into glider shortcut on the left of the second to last turn. And perhaps more impressively, we have a mushroom shortcut that involves charge jumping to trick off this tree to skip a massive turn on the course. It's tricks like these which make Mario Kart World so exciting to play, as once you've mastered its mechanics, you can pull off some wild moves. On Moo Moo Meadows of all tracks. Heck, the world record time trial even has you bouncing off a cow after grinding one of the breakable fences. Moo Moo Meadows is an icon, truly the moment, and I'm glad it's here, just let's maybe give it a break after Mario Kart World, yeah? At number 19, we have Peach Stadium, which has you riding around the exterior of Peach's castle, launching off of boost pads, taking some tight turns, and avoiding bright green pipes to reach the finish line. This is a way better track than the horrendous Peach's loop below, and is actually an underestimated favourite of mine for doing well on. See, the best strategy here is just to get a triple mushroom in your first item box, use a mushroom to cross the immediate off-road shortcut, and then smuggle the rest of your items up to a higher position by playing the rest of the track cleanly. As long as you're able to take that first cut on each lap without too much faffing about, you'll be in a good position for the rest of the race. Even better if you have a shock dodge item in your second slot. Beyond that, it's just fun. We've got the extra upper path with the grind rail you can take, which, while a tad slower than the lower path, keeps you away from some of the action below, and I really like the visual of the final turn into the finish line, as you see the bus terminal beneath. But I've got to admit, Peach Stadium feels like an early game track, yet it's placed right before Rainbow Road in the Special Cup. It's such an odd placement for a track that feels like it should be one of the first you race on in-game. And also, if you mess up the bagging for good starting item strategy, it can be a nightmare to catch back up. And with not a lot of fun tech to pull off, it makes this course drag if you're in the back of the pack. At number 18, we have Sky High Sundae, which started life as one of the most hated tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, before getting a renewed chance at life in World. In fact, Sky High Sundae is a competitive favourite, with a layout that rewards very careful front running. There are a handful of different lines you can take on every part of the course, and figuring out how to chain together some of the different rails and boosts can feel extremely satisfying. There's the centre shortcut mid-track where you boost through boxes that feels great to make it through, albeit I avoid it myself because it just makes you an easy target. And the new tech where you wall grind around the final turn of Sky High Sundae to avoid taking the wide turn is a necessity to learn here if you want to get good. Of course, with such a risky tech, the shock item is easier to predict on this track, as who can resist the allure of popping the shock right as multiple racers are doing a shortcut where failure equals falling off the track? That means shock dodges need to be accounted and planned for, so you have a lot to think about while racing. For me, my best Sky High Sundae placements come from grinding to 20 coins and just taking calculated risks, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm not nearly consistent enough yet at this track to put it higher on the list, but I think it's a course that will rank higher and higher up as I keep playing Mario Kart World. At number 17, we have Cheep Cheep Falls. Now this track is a great example of why I wanted to get a ton of playtime with Mario Kart World before making this ranking, because had I made this on release week, this might have been my number one track. And Cheep Cheep Falls is lovely. The Japanese-inspired autumnal color palette is absolutely up my alley, and I love that half of the track is driving up the temple, while the other half is a river rapid sequence that ends with a drift through a large lake back to the start line. There are multiple hidden paths, like wall riding on this turn to reach a hidden extra lake to trick off of, or this rock which takes you up to a higher path where if you have a mushroom, it gives you a perfect line to blast over that mid-river shortcut. But the problem with Cheep Cheep Falls is that it's a bagging track, purely because the final shortcut is such a massive time save that everybody wants to take it. You will get shocked on lap 3 on the final turn so that someone else can use a Mega Mushroom, squish you, and blast into first place. The frustrating part about this shortcut though is how difficult it actually is to drift through. The turn is insanely sharp with no help thanks to the water physics before it, so even if you do the cut correctly, you might still end up hitting a wall or going too far outwards with your line. And sometimes it's even possible to accidentally hit an out of bounds spot, forcing Lakitu to pick you up and take your items and ruin your entire evening. I love Cheep Cheep Falls, but there really is only one way to consistently play this course, whereas a lot of my top picks are way more nuanced in how you try to run them. At number 16, we have Toad's Factory, a fantastic remake of the original course on the Wii, which I absolutely dread racing on. Now to clarify, this course manages to excel in Mario Kart World, featuring an upwards path on the very first turn, multiple grind rails across the big straightaway at the back with the conveyor belts, and the ending of the course has been refined with 2 steel girders you can grind along, as well as the cranes which also come with their own grind rails and the usual boosters. The identity of Toad's Factory for the Wii is still here and better than ever, but I've just gotta say it, I find this course extremely nerve-wracking to play. The tight corridors and constant obstacles are fine in 12-player lobbies, like in Mario Kart Competitive, but the moment you open the door to 24-player lobbies, this can be a chore to play on if you're in the middle of the pack. You either have to front-run this track to high heavens, or stick to the back and pray you get shock or a dodge item, because with this track's ending being shortcut central, the shock will hit there and you will need to prepare in advance. I'm just not the biggest fan of tracks where getting Mario Karted can knock you from the top 3 to a bottom 3 position, and Toad's Factory is especially brutal. It's like a switch is flipped and every player becomes a spammy road rage monster and you're just trying to survive. Like, this is still an A tier track, and if you're playing with just 12 players, it's an S tier. But as someone who struggles with the more chaotic 24-player mode, I just don't find Toad's Factory as enjoyable there as others. This is a track that could rise in my rankings in the future though. And since you made it halfway through the video, maybe power that subscribe button. We're trying to reach 40,000 subscribers. And you know what? I hear it can help you shock dodge and avoid blue shells if you subscribe, so maybe go and click that button. At number 15, we have Salty Salty Speedway, a brand new oceanside track that sees you driving up through the streets of this beautiful town before riding down the river like a Venetian gondola, ending in a large U-turn in the bay to reach the finish line. Now, I'm still not a big fan of the big water segment at the end, as without any way to trick, you're just driving in straight lines followed by one turn, unless you have the mushrooms to do the final shortcut. But what makes Salty Salty Speedway this high on the list are the insane amount of alternate paths you can take. From the beginning, you can charge jump onto land for an extra burst of speed. There are rails you can wall grind up to on this spiral, which you can ride. You can wall grind this wall and hop over to this upper portion of the spiral, where with a healthy amount of brake drifting, you can reach this upper shortcut containing a double box. And towards the top of the river, you can wall grind this spot, hop onto this rail, right trick onto this wall, and bounce onto the upper path to get a glider across the entire bay. Most people don't take this route, meaning you'll be safe from the mosh pit below for the first couple laps. And there's even more crazy tech that I simply cannot perform on this track, which makes it insane to run at high level play. Salty Salty Speedway may be 15th for now, but as I continue to improve this course, it is going to drift higher in my rankings, mark my words. At number 14, we have DK Spaceport, a Donkey Kong themed track that pays homage to the humble beginnings of our favourite ape and our favourite new donk mayor. The track layout is a series of straightaways, each presenting an entirely new obstacle for the players to deal with. You've got jump panels, which can help you avoid the barrels being thrown at you from the cannons. You've got barrels rolling sideways along the course that you have to slide through. You've got rails you can grind and trick on for quick boosts. And an entire portion of the track dedicated to wall riding, where you can get to the very tops of the structure if you're careful, all leading into a large confrontation with the Mecha DK at the top and his overly large barrels. It's a perfect tutorial level for forcing players to engage with all the game's new mechanics, though ironically, if you want to race this track at top speed, it's better to not engage with some of those. For this straightaway, it's better to ignore the blue ramps altogether, while for the wall riding sequence, it's fastest to stick on ground level, only riding the wall if you need to avoid an item. I like that every turn is a shortcut though, whether with mushroom or feather, to help players catch up. The only danger is how the last part of the track is again, Shock City. It's the best time to hit players since everyone will lose their items on the final run to the finish line, and since it's literally just a straight shot, if you've got 20 coins, you use the shock and you have a gold mushroom, a bullet bill, or hell even a mega, you basically guarantee a top 3 finish. It's not always possible because front-running this track can actually work wonders under the right conditions, especially if you can smuggle a shock dodge item up to the top of the pack from the start, which adds some of that nuance I like in these upper tier races. And sometimes people just let off the shock a little early before the item box to completely trip everyone who was smuggling dodge items up, which I find very entertaining. Overall, DK Spaceport is a lot of fun, and the mind games as you get closer to the end are really enjoyable to feel out. But then a shock dodge is always satisfying, whatever the weather. Usually rain. At number 13, we have Wario Stadium, one of the worst tracks in the series, somehow remade into one of the most competitively viable tracks in the series. They took away the length of the N64 original, added in some great rail grinding and wall grinding opportunities, and suddenly, you have the second coming of Miyamoto himself. Which is all well and good if you're a top player who can do the optimal lines every lap, getting all the fun tricks off the top walls, chaining together tech that will land you at the finish line in a good spot. But if you're me, someone who actively struggles and also ends up in the middle of the pack while racing here, you'll find yourself getting bumped off rails and forced onto the regular route, which is real risky business. I absolutely love that this is a competitive track where everyone brings their A game, but for the life of me, I always end up choking here, whether it's messing up the first portion and being in the back by the time we reach the mid-race item boxes, or absolutely botching the final shortcut on the last U-turn because I'm still learning how to position myself after the big jump. I just find Wario Stadium to be extremely tough to navigate. It's a course that, again, will rise in my rankings the better I get at it, but for now, it's just a really well-designed course, and I understand why it would be some people's top 10, top 5. I just suck at it, and I would rather race on the rest of the courses coming up, which I'm just a little bit better at. At number 12, we have Dino Dino Jungle, where some say you can see Chris Pratt taming velociraptors in the background or some shit. I haven't watched the Jurassic Park movies since the third one anyway. Wait, what do you mean it's called Jurassic World now? That's fucking stupid. Dino Dino Jungle is a fun track because whether you try to front run or bag, you're gonna have a good time. You have the opening turn and straightaway where you deal with various dinos going about their days depending on the lap, Triceratops that you can grind over, a Brachiosaurus stomping around, or a T-Rex looking to ruin your lines. Then you get 3 options for the next corner, 2 regular paths, or you can grind up the dino here while getting some quick tricks for a boost, which can get you onto a nearby rail for some extra speed. The indoor part of this facility though is where the real gamers show up. If you manage to farm some mushrooms, you can cut through the entire area with this shortcut, which you practically need to cut every lap in order to win here. Then just try to farm a dodge item for lap 3 and Bob's your uncle, congratulations. If you can't take this cut, you have to do a wider turn that takes a lot more time, and if you get hit by the water geysers, I'm so sorry, that mid-air speed is painfully slow. There's even a feather shortcut that is way too difficult for me to do, but is so satisfying to pull off. Dino Dino Jungle rewards skillful play, with the only RNG being those dinosaurs all over the shop. Sometimes you can just find yourself on a bad cycle and get clipped by the T-Rex. But aside from that, it's great fun, and the Jurassic Park theme is insanely inspired. No complaints here. At number 11, we have Crown City, which barely misses out on a top 10 finish. Comparing Crown City to the tour tracks from the Booster Course Pass, it's like night and day, because Crown City actually feels like it was designed to be in a playable video game, and the city didn't have to be based on a real-world location, which allowed them to actually have fun. The first lap taking you down the promenade and through the grungy back alleys is a great start, with lots of coin collecting potential as 24 players in a dark alley equals a lot of violence. Then you emerge onto the main street, which, while a straightaway, gives you multiple chances to collect coins and grind your way forwards. Lap 2 is a journey onto the rooftops, drifting around a spiral and grinding over beams and solar panels. We love efficiency. This is a dangerous spot to be in though, as it's very easy to get boomeranged or red shelled on one of the jumps here, sending you plummeting into the streets. Dare I say, it could be considered race ending. Then you do a fun glider section back down to the main street where the real fun begins. Lap 3 is vicious. You've got 2 immediate shortcuts down an S-curve through some grass, and whether the shock chooses to hit there or after the next item boxes is just up to Nintendo themselves. If you can get through those shortcuts with a mushroom or dodge item, you are home free to make a rush for the final section of the course. I keep forgetting though you can charge jump onto the railings to the left of the item boxes here, and it helps you a line for the last dash to the finish line. Because Crown City becomes a fucking war zone on that last sprint. All the shells, all the items, you just have to find a line that keeps you out of the action and pray your items give you the boost you need. The adrenaline is always pumping in Crown City, and that's not just because of the bop playing in the background. This music is amazing. My only complaint is that the big straightaway at the end of lap 1 and lap 2 is a little bland in comparison to the rest of the track. At number 10, we have Drybones Burnout, which gets the distinction of having my favourite theming of any of the new courses. Because who would have guessed the Drybones' first true course in Mario Kart would be a race through a giant skeletal creature fashioned after the Day of the Dead? You can see the Mexican influences across the entire map, with playful coloured art on the bones, the festival rope bundles that you can grind along, and just the overall colour palette of the course making me feel like I've wandered into a crazy festival. As for the actual layout, I love how there are alternate paths upon alternate paths, with barely any actual areas where falling will result in you going out of bounds. Though of course the top path is the most preferred due to the access to various track shortcuts, plus the amount of coins available to collect. But what I find so fascinating about Drybones Burnout is how few item boxes we have on the course. Once you pass the glider section and grab the item boxes on the other side, you don't see any more until the next lap. Which means if you fail to get a mushroom or a dodge item at these boxes, you are absolutely fucked. This is because almost all of the time saving on this course is done at the end, with a twisty-turny descent to the start line, complete with multiple lava pools to shortcut over. And of course this makes it a prime shock spot, often ending the races of most who attempt to front-run this track. And hi, I'm one of those people. For the life of me, I can't run Drybones Burnout because I always fall victim to the end of the course, watching as multiple racers zoom past me with mushrooms, yet even worse, if I end up in the pack, I always manage to get struck by a stray item while boosting through the lava, leading to a bottom placement. I want to rank Drybones Burnout higher on this list for the pure perfection of its theming, but I am so atrocious at the section post-glider that I dread seeing it in my matches because I know I'm about to tank on the leaderboard. Perhaps, as the kids would say, I need to get good. At number 9, we have Whistle Stop Summit, the most beloved track for neurodivergent players, because we all do in fact love trains. Whistle Stop Summit is the grind rail track, with you being able to grind along the train tracks and along the rails lining the course to the point where optimal play has you on rails far more than off rails. And this was a course that took time to grow on me. I found it annoying that my drifts would be interrupted by getting stuck to the rails, a unique issue to this course if you take certain turns too wide. But once you understand what Whistle Stop is asking of you, the course becomes insanely fun to front run. You've got the train constantly looping around, which you have to watch out for depending on the cycle, and with how rails work, you'll have players trapping them with bananas or sending shells along them to snipe their competition. But the shortcut potential here is immense to make up for the carnage. A charge jump skip across this grass saves you a mushroom, this gap can be feather skipped, and if you're a true master, you can grind the rails of the final descent sequence in such a way that you can trick yourself up to this rail to skip the lower turn and shortcut entirely. This is the hardest tech I have tried to learn in this game so far, and I suck at it, but once I master it, Whistle Stop, you're gonna be my bitch. A fantastic course that I cannot wait to improve at, and one with such a high skill ceiling that I have to respect it. At number 8, we have Faraway Oasis, which is perhaps the most basic of the courses in my top 10. It's not got a crazy amount of tech, but I think it's the most beginner-friendly when it comes to teaching players how to do its more difficult tricks, like grinding onto this rail, then leaping into the water so you can trick up onto the next rail, followed by a left trick onto this turn that takes you into the final waterfall stretch pretty safely. It feels so satisfying to pull all of this off, and can often save you a ton of time if you're in a beginner lobby. I front-ran this track with this technique, though of course in competitive and pro play, everyone can do this, so you have to adapt. You can also mushroom beneath the upper path with 2 boosts to reach the final item box, which also works, but that's where the war begins, because at the end of the track is a sharp hairpin turn, and almost everyone will try to take the shortcut around it. Whether that's with mushrooms or a feather, it can be frustrating when your race comes down to how you take a final turn, or whether the shock hits on the final turn, or whether your shortcut mushroom gets stolen by a boo a millisecond before you use it on a final turn. and yet despite the imminent rage of those moments, I still come back to Faraway Oasis. The aesthetic is so Lion King coded, and it's got some of the least annoying water out of the watercourses, but the skill ceiling just isn't high enough in my opinion to justify a better ranking, even if it is one of my best tracks. At number 7, we have Acorn Heights, which feels like the sequel to Wildwoods that I never knew I needed. The layout of this course is definitely the highlight, with all 3 segments having their own unique obstacles to deal with. The first large turn that leads to a series of vine paths is often a clusterfuck at the start of the race, so you're often just trying to get through alive. The glider segment that leads down into this forest lane, where you can take the safe ground path, is fun, but you can also bounce along leaves, springy mushrooms, or grind along blades of grass. There are so many ways to take this part of the course, and if you're at the front of the pack, it's very easy to trap some of these paths to make life difficult for who comes after. Then you get the most valuable moment of the track, the mushroom shortcut, which can be done shroomless with some insane wall riding tech I just cannot perform, but if you want to keep a top position, you need to take this cut. This leads to the ascent back up to the tree, where a giant acorn cascades down one of the 4 lanes. There's a lot of choice on how to take this, with you needing to make concessions as you go, while still trying to find the fastest route, only to realise the fastest way is actually along the grindable flower stalks that you can reach near the mushroom shortcut. It takes a bit of practice to know when to trick to the next section, but if you can learn how to hop across all 3 stems, you'll be hitting that finish line in a great position. Not so easy when you're in the pack and everyone is around you, threatening to bump you off, but that's the risk you run with Mario Kart World. Acorn Heights has so many variables to what makes a good run, and it's that high variance that keeps me coming back for more every single time. At number 6, we have DK Pass, a track that I didn't expect to see this high on the list based on first impressions, but one that ultimately has so much potential for a fun race that it kept climbing and climbing until it became one of my staple favourites. The basic course has you racing up a mountain road, avoiding a giant snowball until you reach the wintry slopes at the top. Then there's a small section with snowdrifts that you can trick off of before some hard drifts onto the ski slope itself, which leads down to a final U-turn to the finish line. It's very, we have Mount Wario at home at first glance. But then you start to learn the shortcut tech. The easiest and most satisfying is this simple trick off the signpost at the first major gap. I love doing this, it's low risk if you time it well and can keep you near the front of the pack. Then you can charge jump onto this lamppost up to this rail, which gets you around the sharp turn at the top of the course. It's really fun to pull these moves off. There's some high skill shortcuts you can take too, like climbing the wall near the signpost and tricking over the rail at the top so you can shroomless boost through the snow above, and up here you can trick into a wall ride along this cliff, then trick off to the right, getting boosts off the nearby trees to take you past all the regular shortcuts. It's super tough to nail, but feels insane when you get it right. The final turn is a shortcut spot but requires some precision to keep your mini-turbo as you come out of the off-road, and it is the worst spot to get shocked on, as you'll spin out and someone will likely squish you with certainty. But it's a risk you have to take if you're front-running this track. DK Pass has way more sauce than it should, and people who don't enjoy this course are missing out, as it's one of the most rewarding, in my opinion, to actually master. At number 5, we have Shy Guy Bazaar, which is now officially a part of Princess Daisy's Kingdom of Sarasaland, to the point where she has an actual palace that you can drive through on one of the intermissions to this course, which is so dang cool. I would say to add it as part of the regular 3-lap course, but Shy Guy Bazaar is already so tightly designed, I wouldn't want to change it. Drifting through the market streets or grinding over the market rooftops is super satisfying. The claws come out though after you make it past the 3 weird pot dudes midway through the course, as this is where everyone then finds it acceptable to use their boomerangs and shells to slay the competition. It leads to this rooftop scramble where, if you trick correctly, you can reach these ropes to the left of the course that give you extra coins, and you can trap them with bananas to ruin the day of whoever comes next. Best of all, this path leaves you in a direct line with the double item box, and keeps you away from the main pack, which makes it very low risk in my opinion. The glide down to the finish line is where I tend to mess up on this course though. Get hit by a red shell or a boomerang and it's just lights out. But this also leads to one of my favourite shortcuts in the game. Keep to the right of the finish line and you can hop onto the fence here, which you can then ride and trick off at the right time to ride these 2 ropes up into the bazaar. This helps you skip the market, and with tight lines can put you squarely in first place. There's even an extra trick here involving a feather jump onto a grind rail that completely shifts your momentum into the next set, skipping another turn. I've never done it myself though, I've only seen it in a shortcut video. Shy Guy Bazaar is one of those courses where even if you're in the bottom, you can make a comeback, while if you're in the front, you can run the course and not worry about some silly shortcut at the end that ruins your entire race. Just the glider section, and if you somehow get red shelled or boomeranged in first place, you probably didn't manage your defense items correctly. Unless it happens to me, in which case it wasn't my fault, it was the fault of the other player and I'm gonna go cry. Also, this track loses out to the other 4 on my top 5 because what do you mean I can't phase through these pots in boo form? At number 4 we have a Rainbow Road, and let me tell you, it's great. If I were ranking these courses based on aesthetics and visuals alone, nothing else comes remotely close to this iteration. But I do think the regular versus variant loses some of the magic of that intermission from Peach's Castle to Rainbow Road where you go through the gate that boosts you into the sky. Holy though, when I first saw this track in Mario Kart World, my jaw dropped. It's the first time a Mario Kart game has ever made me go, holy fuck. Because this Rainbow Road is a journey, a real tour, a marathon, not a sprint, that is carefully cultivated to bring a tear to your eye. The first lap is a traditional Rainbow Road, with the stained glass roadwork, the vast turns where it's easy to oversteer, and the split track where you can do some cheeky shortcuts if you're careful. It's here where you're most likely to get lost in the pack, so staying at the front or at the back is pretty important. Then we reach the bisexual lighting of the Sky Island River. Monolith Soft, I know you helped with this. It's ultimately more of a set piece, but we still get 2 mushroom shortcuts to shave off some time before reaching more of the actual road, which again cuts into 2 tracks that weave around each other, allowing for a lot of fun positioning as you jump between them. But then you boost up to the space station and suddenly you're driving down a Mario Galaxy style corkscrew, rainbow thwomps threatening to crush you, the shock likely having just been used because it's a great spot to fuck people over, before you finally launch into that final lap, cascading back down to Earth through a rainbow gliding section. The path splits into 2 again and you have to pick another lane, left or right, and this is where your race will either survive or come undone. And for me, it's 50-50. I love the boost panels that keep you at top speeds, but by the time you reach the final glide down to the last bit of the track, I'm constantly either getting my mushrooms stolen by Boo, or getting sniped by items so that I can never capitalize on the last few shortcuts. This is a skill-based track, but it's also as much a task of item management in the face of a course where multiple shocks can be used due to the length. But gliding to a sky finish line will never not feel epic. And all of this is set to one of the most ambitious music tracks in Mario Kart history. Every lap of Rainbow Road has its own set of music that plays, changing with each lap to reflect each area of the road, perfectly timed to give you one hell of an experience. Whoever plays the drums, shout out to you, it adds a nice kick to the music in the first lap. That victory fanfare in the 4th lap, the techno energy of the 3rd lap, or the twinkling peaceful sounds of lap 2, inject it all into my veins. But it's the cinematic element of Rainbow Road that keeps it out of my top 3. I like to play it once a day, but multiple Rainbow Roads a session can feel a bit chore-ish due to the length, while my last 3 courses are all just so replayable no matter the weather. At number 3, we have Bowser's Castle, which is one of the most popular courses online due to what I consider to be intense and frenetic gameplay, where every part of the track manages to showcase exactly what makes Mario Kart World great. From the very beginning, you have 3 paths you can initially take. Go down past the item boxes and through the corridor, go up the chains outside leading to a food court and some rails that allow for a fun wall ride shortcut, or do the cut we've all heard about where you wall ride up onto this rail, do some tricks, and try to jump this gap with the power of momentum. There are people who can pull this off flawlessly, but I'm still working to get my consistency up. However, it's the single fastest cut in the race, and if you can perform it, you'll have a great chance at extending potential leads in lap 2 and 3. Or you can just use a feather to hop the gap in a different way. Then you boost up into the clouds, where we get this high-speed descent past the flaming Bowser sculpture, and into a split path filled with meteors falling to the ground. The left path here is genuinely faster, but the right path has a mushroom shortcut in case you're further back. This leads to a glide back to the finish line, which always has me tense because there's a lot of empty space from when you land to when you cross that finish, and you never know what could come your way if you're not careful. Bowser's Castle is just a rush from start to end. It's fast-paced, filled with shortcuts, and if you're feeling extra risky, you can even go for this one in the second half, where you trick off the edge, wall ride upwards to the left, and let the momentum carry you over the Bowser statue platform. I can perform this one a bit more consistently than the rail grind cut, but it's more risky to go for in actual matches. What I love about Bowser's Castle though is that once you're in a front-running position, and if you can perform these cuts, you can create one heck of a commanding lead, one that not even a shock or a blue shell can stop. And because these shortcuts are tough, yet easy to just give a go, it gets quite addictive trying to pull them off. Give it a few months, this might genuinely be my favourite course in the game. And just to run back to the aesthetics of the course, does anyone else feel this variant of Bowser's Castle could easily be a Dr. Neo Cortex track from the Crash Bandicoot racing games? It kinda gives me those vibes for some reason. At number 2, we have Airship Fortress, the best front-running track in the game, and I will hear nothing else in that regard. I'd heard tales of this track being one of the best in the series, but I played Mario Kart DS at a friend's house a couple times, and that was it, so I barely remembered the course. Then you look at the layout in World and you think, dang, this is a really compact and short experience, how could this be the best course in the game? And then you realize the world record is 50% grinding, and how competitive it actually is to maintain a front-running position, and everything starts to click. The moment you can consistently land switching from the left to right rail at the start of the course, everything just works, and grinding across the deck of the airship is way too satisfying to stop being fun. You've got rocky wrenches popping out if things take a tumble or you can't take the rails, so the obstacles are there and evident. There's a tight U-turn into the underpass of the ship where you dodge the 2 torches while using the red rails for extra speed before launching from the cannon to the fortress ahead of you. This is the most nerve-wracking part of the track for me, because if someone hits you with a red shell or boomerang here, you lose all your momentum and all your positions. Similarly, when you land, I've sometimes found it difficult to drift in the right direction while getting my bearings, leading me to choke in the tower and lose the run. But when you get that perfect drift down the spiral and you emerge into the last turn, it feels magnificent. You can mushroom boost over a tiny bit of the off-road and can even go for a charge jump to get onto the rail. It's risky, but something I want to get better at. Basically, the tech in this track may not be too complex, but it rewards knowledge of the game. And if you front run, you can make a commanding lead of it, which I love. And if you're in the back of the pack, you can always farm a bullet bill and use it in the final spiral, getting a bullet extension to the finish line. Airship Fortress is one of my highest win rates, and that alone has me coming back for more, but there's one last track in this game that just hits differently, you know? At number 1, we have the great Question Block Ruins, floating high above the clouds. Honestly, I'm shocked it took this long for us to get a question block themed track, and the idea of one that's been in the air for so long that it decayed into the ruins we see in-game is pretty dang cool. It also helps that I've always had an affinity for ancient ruin-style tracks, and tracks taking place in the sky. Some of my favourites from 8 Deluxe were Thwomp Ruins and Cloudtop Cruise, and Great Question Block Ruins basically combines them while having a little Sky Garden GBA action on top. The opening turn and subsequent jump that can land you onto a tight rail if you go for it is super intense. Then you get past the second item box and emerge onto a big straightaway with multiple paths to take. You can go the regular route, not ruffle any feathers. You can take the bottom left chain, grab a few coins, or take the right chain and try to go for some trick momentum for the upcoming shortcut. Or you could even take this wall, ride to the top, and get a little glider sequence. But what I love the most is that no matter the route, everyone is trying to set themselves up because of the final part of the track. 2 clouds that you bounce along to reach the final U-turn, and a mushroom shortcut, which leads into the final glider that brings you back to the finish line. Only, we all know the true shortcut is to trick off the floating rings and wall ride the left ruins to skip the clouds altogether. And the fact there are multiple ways to set up and perform this shortcut is insane to me. each with their own difficulty and complications, like how you need to avoid hitting the clouds or you'll get sent in a completely wrong direction, or how if you don't get high enough on the left wall, you won't actually have the momentum to reach the road. Sometimes you can save yourself with quick thinking, but sometimes it's better to just take the regular path, watch the rest of the pack try and fail the shortcut, and then go on your merry way. Great Question Block Ruins, at least to me, has the most fun skill expression this game has, and that's something all my top tracks have in common. They all reward players who learn the mechanics and truly understand how to pull off all the tech. Sometimes you can get away with a bit of luck, but not with these tracks. And that's what makes them so rewarding to race on, because you know most of the time you're going to be rewarded for playing well. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And that's my Mario Kart World track ranking list. Do you agree with my thoughts? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can avoid that blue shell and stay up to date on all my future videos. My social medias are on screen now. You can follow me on Blue Sky, you can follow me on Twitch, you can follow me on Discord. And a massive shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing, thank you so much. It's $4.99, you get shout outs, and you get access to my Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 Let's Play. So I'll see you guys next time for another video. Adios.